Thank you, George. Komacheti, journalist for justice. I was asked to come and speak on corruption and the nexus between security and corruption, especially after reading this impressive, but also, I would say, quite depressing report by Journalists for Justice. I've only got four comments to make. For me, what brought home how clear and present the challenge we face vis-a-vis corruption in our security services, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about corruption and security and the implications it has on our daily lives as Kenyans. All of you look very young, so you may not remember Norfolk Hotel. When this front of Norfolk Hotel facing the road was completely open, and you could sit there and drink tea and watch the cars going up and down and watch the students going into the National Theatre. Now it looks like a fortress out there. You can't actually even be able to see in properly from outside. And for me, that brings it home. That's a price we as Kenyans are paying. We can't go into supermarkets, we can't go into hotels, we can't go into places where we used to be able to mix publicly, freely, because of the threat that is posed by a group like Al-Shabaab. And then a detailed quality report like this one is brought to us that tells us what we've been hearing for 2 years, but in a manner that is a result of serious research, including from within the KDF and within other actors involved in especially the sugar and charcoal business around Kismayo. We've been hearing about it. It's been written about. The academic papers have been published about it. There have been workshops and other events. The UN has been looking into it. And one of the troubling things is that with the connivance of our security establishment, parts of the KDF and our political elite, and groups like Ras Kamboni and Al-Shabaab, working together, they've created a tremendous revenue stream for Al-Shabaab, who are fighting us as Kenyans. This is concerning for me because vis-a-vis corruption, the one institution in our society which has not suffered like other institutions in terms of perceptions, and corruption is 50% perception. It's what people believe about you. People believe our politicians are corrupt. People believe parliament is corrupt. But the KDF has had a good reputation. It's been an honorable profession to go into. It's been an institution that we respect. When we hear about it, when we see them on national days, we respect the Kenya Defence Forces. So this report harms the KDF reputationally, and they're going to have to work extremely hard to repair that damage because corruption is extremely, it has a very corrosive effect on the reputation of an institution. Secondly, and one of the greatest concerns after reading this report that I emerged with vis-a-vis corruption is that we now have in northern Kenya, as George alluded to, in the merging between Somalia and northern Kenya, we have a conflict economy now, thriving. That's a lawless economy, where corruption is business. We're not even talking about corruption. I always say, in every society you have a private sector and a pirate sector. And the pirate sector are the people who are involved in the corruption and nothing else. And the private sector are those who are trying to keep their heads above water, paying the occasional bribe here and there to keep business going. But we're talking about an entire part of the country that has become a conflict economy, a self-sustaining conflict economy. That tends to spread. And that is something that in the medium to long term, we as Kenya should be extremely worried about. It's not something in our entire history as an independent country Kenya has ever had, of this lawless place where corruption is the modus operandi. Last but not least, we are witnessing something which corruption does that is extremely dangerous, which is the hollowing out of our security establishment. When its capacity to prosecute its mandate as per our constitution is undermined by corruption. When you read this report and you're talking of just the sugar being smuggled every day in collusion with the KDF and Al-Shabaab and their partners, it's $1 million a day. $1 million a day. It's $357 million a year. And that kind of corruption, that kind of profits that accrue, when you have generals or brigadiers in the army saying that you cannot survive in the army without being corrupt, what happens to that institution is that it becomes hollow. Its ability to prosecute its mandate to protect Kenyans is undermined. And this always reminds me of the saying that I learned the hard way myself when I was in government, is that national security is the last refuge of the corrupt. It is a stamp that is put on all documents that people want to steal from. And so it's something I think we should be extremely mindful of going forward. The other point I want to make is Al-Shabaab poses a threat throughout the region. And it is an extremely cohesive, organized, disciplined, effective group. And we have to acknowledge that. Their demise has been announced many times, and they keep on bouncing back. So we have to respect their resilience. And therefore, it emphasizes the importance of our partnerships with other African countries around us. The Ugandans and the Burundians have troops there. We are also cooperating with the European Union, who are helping us with resources, the UK, the US. We have partners in this fight. And the kind of corruption that is described in this report undermines our relationships with these partners in a fundamental way. Reading the report, reading is alluded to, in fact, quite directly, that the Burundians and Ugandans are sort of saying, let these Kenyans go on with their corrupt business. That's their attitude to us. So, because of our corruption, that is deeply, again, something that we should be concerned about. Finally, we have a situation where, for private profit, our elite is undermining our own security and empowering Al-Shabaab. This I want to say as something to also encourage the media and journalists for justice when they do this kind of work. This is extremely important work. Over the past 1 week, we have seen journalists being harassed for reporting on security issues. Very recently, up until yesterday or the day before. And I think the point I would like to emphasize that shooting the messenger for questioning security spending and security issues has the opposite effect. It amplifies the issues rather than makes them go away. We're building, as Dongo Anaina just reminded me, we're building a 30 billion shilling wall between Somalia and Kenya, ostensibly to protect us for security purposes. But if this is the scenario that has been described in the report vis-a-vis how corrupt our behavior is there of our institutions, like the KDF, etc., our politicians and other leaders, then one wonders whether that wall is a serious thing or just a contract for people to make money out of. The one thing that comes out of this report, which I think can be taken action upon very quickly, is that it forms the basis for the UN and other governments to impose sanctions and visa restrictions on particular individuals who are named there, who are involved in this activity of empowering Al-Shabaab to attack us here by corruptly empowering this terrorist organization. This is something that can be done now to basically begin to limit the ability of these corrupt people to further undermine our institutions and our nation. As George said, I'll end on the same note. We have to take our destiny into our own hands. What we are facing here is a massive leadership failure. It is very sad to see it in the KDF. I think it's in the beginnings, because it's not the whole of the KDF, it's simply part of the KDF. KDF has historically been one of our most respected institutions, even in opinion polls that are done. It's other institutions that emerge as most corrupt. Corruption is toxic. Once an appetite for it is acquired by an institution, it spreads extremely quickly and is very difficult to extract without a major, unless you're decapitating an institution and starting from scratch, which is an extremely painful process. So I'll leave it at that and say thank you very much once again to journalists for justice for this report, and to also again repeat that your media here as well, like Journalists for Justice, fearlessly push this message out. I know the last week has been a difficult one for media, where parliamentary reporters are even being picked up or whatever it is within parliamentary precincts, which is illegal. But I think we have a duty to report these kinds of issues when key institutions in our society are being hollowed out by corruption. Thank you very much.